It truly is a pleasure to be back here at the Forest History Society. I had the opportunity to be here before. It seems like this is going in and out, and I don't, yeah. Let's try to do switch off for a minute. Give this a shot.
Collaboration from the
All
start.
right. Okay, we'll try again, and hopefully those on Zoom can hear us. But it's wonderful to be with these distinguished panelists, colleagues and friends, some old friends in the audience that I was surprised to see this evening, and also some new friends and colleagues at the Nature Conservancy. It is wonderful to be able to have this opportunity to have a conversation around future leaders in our profession in forestry and natural resources, something we all care deeply about. We have an opportunity to explore, to look back to the past. I think it's always important for us to not forget our past and what brought us to where we are today, and then what's going to take us forward in the future. Bear with me with this mic. So before we get started, what I would like to do is just briefly introduce our panelists. And so starting with Dr. Indy Burke, who is the Carl W. Knobloch Jr. Dean of the Yale School of the Environment. And ecosystem ecologist, her research focuses on carbon and nitrogen cycling in dryland ecosystems. She earned her biology degree from Middlebury College and her PhD in botany from the University of Wyoming, and taught at both Colorado State University and the University of Wyoming prior to joining Yale. Dean Burke has received over 20 million in grant support for research and published over 180 peer-reviewed articles, chapters, books, and reports. A respected educator and intellectual leader in the US and internationally, Dean Burke is particularly interested in fostering interdisciplinary scholarship, and we'll talk more about that this evening. And she came to the Yale School of the Environment in 2016 from the University of Wyoming, where she was Dean of the School of Environment and Natural Resources. And Dr. Lori Bennear, who is the Standback Dean of the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University, where she's also a professor of energy, economics, and policy. Her research uses quantitative methods to evaluate the effectiveness of environmental policies in areas such as energy development, drinking water quality for drinking water, and fisheries management. Her work has been widely published in leading journals, and Dr. Bennear has led several university initiatives on sustainability and regulation, and has served on National Academies committees focused on offshore energy and pipeline safety. She holds degrees from Occidental College, Yale University, and a PhD in public policy from Harvard University. And my friend Sam Cook is a graduate of NC State College of Natural Resources and is currently the Executive Director of Forest Assets and Vice President of the Natural Resources Foundation at NC State University, managing forest lands for the state, the endowment fund, and the college. Sam has served as president of the Society of American Foresters. We overlapped for a year on the board. He was president in 2023. He holds board positions with organizations including the World Forestry Center, Forest History Society, Land Trust Alliance, and Sustainable Forestry Initiative. Over his 40-year career, Sam has worked to advance sustainability, supporting landowners on all income levels through programs that increase both forest sustainability and economic returns. And we know that he is passionate about mentoring students, and I've had the pleasure to see this in action many times. And so thank you for that. And then that's true for all of our panelists this evening, and we'll be exploring that more. And so I do still feel like this mic is cutting in and out, and I see some folks looking puzzled at times. I'll try to keep it as close to my mouth as possible. And pretty soon we'll be hearing from others speak, so we won't have this issue, hopefully. So to get started with our first question this evening, and we will have time at the end for questions from you, from the audience, and from Zoom. But let's begin by exploring what's unique about each of the schools that these individuals represent and the students at those universities. And we'll start with Dr. Burke.
Test. Okay, good. We're old. That's most unique. We've been, as we like to say, bringing science to solutions for 125 years. We were the first graduate forestry program, and we were certainly the longest serving in the United States. And because of the history book that Jamie Lewis and others have just produced, that went to the printer last week, I'm in a position where I can talk about a number of themes that have been true for a long time. And I think it's the collection of those themes that makes us unique. And yes, we're old, but throughout all of that time, we have had spectacular faculty members who are scholarly leaders in everything from silviculture and forest ecology to forest economics to wood products and more. And now much more broadly in wildlife, in biodiversity, in climate change, and much more. These are top-notch scholars who also have, throughout history, had a real role in public service. And I think this is one of the things that is most unique about us. Our early faculty served as key leaders in the Forest Service and in many other organizations around the country and internationally. And today we have members of our faculty who have served for the World Trade Organization for the first time, bringing sustainability to WTO, who've been lead authors on IPCC programs, who've served in the White House Council of Economic Advisors, who served in Treasury, who led science for the EPA, and who were commissioners for the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's an astounding amount of public service that our faculty do in bringing their scholarship to bear on solving problems at the national and international level. So theme one, rock star faculty for 125 years. The second is that our students become leaders all over the world. We right now have alumni who are serving in 80 countries as leaders in the environment and in forestry. It's not just your mic, my mic.
Not alone.
Yeah. You know, this has been true for a long time. I mean, Gifford Pinchot doesn't really count as an alum. He was a Yale alum, and then he started our school. But he defined conservation for the first time. And Aldo Leopold was one of our early scholars, early alums who developed the land ethic, for instance. And today we have leaders all over the world, including many from the global South. I should say we started having students from the global South in the early 1900s, but today we have a real program in leadership to leaders in the global South that makes us quite unique. We provide over 20 scholarships a year to future leaders from the global South. Third key theme, we have been big on field forestry and field ecology forever. We do a lot of place-based research. We started with wonderful forestry camps that you can read about in the new book. And now we have a several week-long orientation. The minute students get to campus, they go to the field together. And they sleep in tents or they sleep in the bunks at Yale Forest and they get out in the field. Many of our courses have field trips. So we feel like this place-based, field-based component is crucial to our school. We're interdisciplinary. We cover many different fields and we have long had a focus on systems thinking. We don't have departments. I don't think there's another school of the environment today that doesn't have departments at all. There are no subdivisions, and it's easy for students to navigate across our school and the rest of Yale. That field experience results in theme 5, which is an incredible sense of community. You should have been at our alumni reunion last weekend. It's just so noisy, you can't even imagine. But what you hear mostly from anybody who's been at our school is they feel connected to us. And I think a lot of that comes from the field experiences, the intimate, intellectual, and social setting that we provide in the field. And because of that community, theme 6, our alumni network, is amazing. They support one another in finding jobs, in mentoring one another, and more. So those are the things that I think collectively make us unique.
Thank you. I was just thinking about the SAF convention that many of us were attending and the buzz that was there. The network is tremendous at Yale, and just the buzz, everyone was excited about the weekend after because they were going to be continuing the celebration. And it's nice to have these 3 organizations celebrating their 125th, and then American Forest 150. It's a big year, many milestones and much to celebrate. So continuing with the same question, Dr. Bennear.
Sure, thank you. Oh, yeah, that one's really working. And I have a naturally loud voice anyway, but it's still cutting out. We're gonna hold it like this. So it's hard to go after Yale when we're talking about schools of forestry and environmental studies. We are younger. We came together as the School of Forestry in 1938. It was the first school of forestry in the southern part of the United States. So we are 38 years behind our distinguished colleagues from New Haven. I think many of the other features that Dean Burke talked about are also features that the Nicholas School is really proud of. And I think it's a feature of the type of training that we are providing to this next generation of environmental and natural resource scholars. They are increasingly technologically savvy, and we are using remote sensing and drones and satellite imaging to radically transform the way we measure, monitor, model, and eventually manage our environmental resources. And yet with all of that technological growth and expansion, which is so exciting, there's something still special about going out into the field with your friends and colleagues and classmates and sleeping in the tents and measuring things. And one of my colleagues calls it bonding through suffering. You know, but it's like the right amount of suffering. And I know, just speaking personally, that I got into the whole area of the environment in large part due to the field experiences, that those were really what made it salient to me. Oh, I don't want to scream if it's coming back in because that would be really bad. Okay. So we share the field experiences, the emphasis on the experiential that we bring to all 3 of our learning levels. We have undergraduates, professional master's students, including our Masters of Forestry program, as well as our Masters of Environmental Management and the PhD program. And we also tout often when we're talking to prospective students, which we might be fighting with each other over, about our amazing alumni network, not just from the Nicholas School, which is over 7,000 strong, but the entire Duke alumni network. We think that interdisciplinarity is in Duke's DNA, and the fact that Duke decided to establish a School of the Environment in 1991, I think was really moving that forward. Duke has an enormously successful history in ecology in particular, and well known for ecology and forestry. But the decision to move a lot of that, plus what was the geology department, which is now our Earth and Climate Sciences program, plus the Duke University Marine Lab, which is down 3 hours and 15 minutes away or so, thereabout, depending on traffic in Beaufort, into one school that was focused on the environment, right? I remember if you talk to the founding dean, Norm Christensen, about putting that school together, they had this proposal to go to the president, and everybody was looking around at the last meeting and saying, what are we going to call this place? And Norm said, how about School of the Environment? And that's what we've been, with a few minor changes every once in a while since 1991. So in terms of what makes us unique, it's hard when I follow Yale, because I think in many ways we're quite similar. We have the similar breadth in terms of our disciplinary expertise, from our technical sciences and engineering to our physical sciences, physical oceanography, soil science, a variety of things, to our biological sciences, all the way through our social sciences. And increasingly, these amazing faculty and their students are doing this work in committed and sustained engagement with the communities in which we live, right? So our focus on community engaged scholarship here in Durham, down in Carteret County, where the Marine Lab is, and throughout North Carolina and the world, is really something that has accelerated with really profound impacts for the communities in which we live. And we're really proud of that as well. But I think if I had to say there was one thing that made us unique, is we have a Marine Lab and you don't. But otherwise, like, we have better weather. I don't know, at least in the winter, not in the summer. But it's just really a privilege to be on the panel with Dean Burke, because I do think that our two schools represent something very special in the training of the next generation of leaders, along with our good friends down the road at NC State.
Good afternoon, everyone.
This works.
Works well. So we're not as old, but we've been there since 1929. And we have a very good forestry and environmental resource university, college. From the standpoint that I came there in 1982, and that's when I started in forestry. Most people considered us then a forestry and a public paper. We converted into a college of natural resources and really created a diverse range of programs and majors, from paper science to biomaterials engineering to forestry and wildlife conservation, environmental toxicology to parks, recreation and tourism, and sports management. But we also offer a different range of natural resource curricula. So at the end of the day, we cover the supply chain from natural resources to numerous products and ecosystem services. What I find that's so unique and different about us, our faculty is top talent. They're all over the United States and probably much all over the world. We are a think and do university, and never considered that until I came back here in 2016, from the standpoint that we do research in communities and in places, and we make it real. Our extension group is pretty solid. They work across the world and the US, but most importantly, they work in the sectors that people need their help. And they go into communities and help the manufacturing, they help the landowners from an outreach perspective, but also down to our students. I think our students are very unique because they seem to be very enthused with the majors that they operate in. They're very loyal to the programs that they offer, that they go through, but they also form a strong bond with the faculty and each one of the other students that they engage with. But they're more supportive of each other. When I think about our students, I look at it in a few words. They form a family. They look at themselves as friends and colleagues. But they also mentor each other, but they focus very heavily on with the advisors and the faculty. I'm very excited about the work that we do across all three departments, which is our forestry and environmental resources, our wildlife, but inclusive of our sports management, that also encompasses our natural resource fields and ecosystem services. But citizen science and ecologies are very critical to the work that our students produce and come out with.
So
Thank you.
very interesting. Thank you to all three of you to hear the uniqueness, but also some similarities between the three schools. And I did have to chuckle when you talked about the sacrifice or the suffering when you're out in the field. It took me back to spring camp at Virginia Tech. And we did have a period of suffering, but it was also a bonding time and lifelong friendships and family, as you said, Sam. Virginia Tech is celebrating its 100th this year with the college. And so moving on to the next question, and I'm going to start on the other end with Sam and answering this. Tell us about what some of your greatest challenges are at this time. What are you facing? And what do you anticipate maybe the challenges 10 to 20 years, talking about the future, 10 to 20 years from now? How are you adapting?
Very good question, Bettina. I raised this question to my dean and he came back with a few things that says AI for some reason ends to be at the top of the list. One, because it's changing society, the industry, and how we teach. And we feel in our college, we're behind the curve. We spend a lot of time with our colleagues in the College of Engineering and the College of Ag Life Sciences who offer AI in the advanced manufacturing side of the curricula. Our students can take these courses, but they need exposure and experience. So we ask our natural resource partners out there, how do we build a bridge that allows our students to come in and do this type work with them, alongside them? A second thing to me is demonstrating that ROI of our programs. I think we've all heard that across the UNC system, internally and externally. We strive to deliver programs that make students career ready. Career ready meaning want them to have growth opportunities and mobility. People need to get paid, but they need to have a life and they need to understand the importance of both. So when we think about the natural resource jobs, usually they can rival for those of business or engineering. Some students and even parents now can graduate with students. They don't want the kids to come out with debt. So how do we help build a bridge that students can show up and be innovative and have growth potential for the positive returns on their investment that they've invested in school and the money they've spent? The impact we make is our students go out to do important work in communities across the state and the region. How do we respond? We're sharpening our strategic goals as a college. What are the best opportunities for our college over the next 5 to 10 years? I think what we need to do is achieve success. We got to communicate better, find ways to market at our programs, but also market the faculty and the research that they do along with the students that they bring along with them, and find ways that we can demonstrate that they bring back the economy or economic development in the communities as well. What are we bringing back to the economy as a whole by working in that space? So if we think about what we do in North Carolina, we actually bring income to the state and we keep those kids here. They get jobs, they produce their family, and they put more students to school. So I feel like we have a good product that we can sell.
Thank you.
So I think the biggest challenge that we face in this space right now is the deep polarization of the current political climate, not just in the United States, but really around the world. And the way in which environment and natural resources and climate have become politicized. I tell my students, I still teach the core environmental econ class, and I tell the students about the 1988 election between George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis, at which point they look at me like I'm really, really, really old. This year I found out that half the class was not born on 9/11. So I was like, I'm really like, this is too much for me. But I talk about how George H.W. Bush actually ran on an environmental platform. And in fact, you can look up online old political ads if you have nothing better to do with your time. And one of them is called The Harbor. And he's actually running about how Michael Dukakis, the governor of Massachusetts, couldn't even clean up the Boston Harbor. How could you possibly trust him to clean up the environment in the United States? Students are just flabbergasted by life. They can't believe that this was ever an issue that wasn't so deeply polarized. And And that has reflected in the types of students I think that we get. When I arrived at the Nicholas School in 2004, I think first we were a much smaller program, but most students said they wanted to be environmental analysts. There was a lot of, we want to get tooled up to be analysts. I hear a lot more of, I want to be an environmental advocate. I'm really nervous about these mics. An environmental advocate. And that has definitely changed, you know, our curricular approach at some level, and the way students approach the material. So one of the things that we work really hard on is trying to, because they haven't experienced it in their life, right, in their young lives, trying to create opportunities and spaces for them to really wrestle with complexity and around environmental issues, right? To get past white hats, black hats, good, bad, and to really wrestle with complexity. But I think that is probably the greatest challenge that we're facing right now. And I feel like if in higher ed, we don't take on that challenge and take it seriously, then nobody else will. And it does feel sometimes like we're a salmon swimming upstream the wrong way. But I do think it's a critically important role for higher ed and particularly for schools of environment and natural resources right now, that students can learn to listen, to understand, even if they don't agree, to learn how to find commonality and move towards solutions together. It's extraordinarily challenging, but I think that is the biggest challenge we face. Second, I guess I might just add, far less existential. We are the world that we're working in is being radically transformed by technology and particularly AI, which means we need a different type of student, and we need to be able to compete for them against, you know, the Googles of the world. Although we just sent a student to Google, but I could talk about that another time. So helping students recognize that, yes, they can be super techy and tooled up on AI, and they can come use those tools to change the world for the better. I think that's the message that we need to be getting out more strongly with this next generation.
I'm gonna sound like one of the students in my class, what they said. I have exactly the same things on my list. I want to dig in just a little bit on the job market being a challenge. It's not only a challenge for all of our alumni who are out in the world, but it's also a challenge for the students who are graduating and trying to be hopeful about the future. The jobs in the environmental sector have tanked. And jobs in academia for our doctoral students, jobs in NGOs are difficult. Jobs in the federal government are a challenge. There is a lot of hope from cities and state governments right now, but we're concerned about the job market. We're concerned about alumni debt with the major job places you can get into, the major career pathways being so low paying, and the debt that our students carry in order to be able to cover the cost of their education. We're concerned about that. So we're working really hard on scholarships. And then everything that Lori said about the public mistrust of science, I think is important, and that the students that we have tended to attract tend not to be able to engage, many of them have tended not to be able to engage in difficult conversations. So we're working on many of those skills as well, about listening, understanding other value sets, engaging in difficult conversations, and working on collaborative solutions. I'll just add that I think that two of the curricular specializations that I think are not viewed in a partisan lens are forestry. I think forestry has some real benefits. It's a very practical field of study, and it is not necessarily associated with one side of the aisle or the other. And the other is business and the environment. Everyone understands that efficiency in business tends to also lend to sustainability and vice versa. So one thing that we do find is that if we're looking for students who can begin to engage in difficult conversations, lots of times it's the forestry students and sometimes the business and the environment students. We have an additional challenge that the others don't, and that is that Congress voted in an endowment tax for 5 universities last July or August, I guess. And so we are paying an 8% tax on the endowment yield, which gives us some budget challenges at this time. Did you also ask what we anticipate the problems are going to be?
Go there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think with the backdrop now, we haven't really talked about climate change and invasive species and pests in addition to human conflict. But I think that with the additions of all of those, we just need to prepare our students to be nimble because the problems facing our forests and our other natural resources are complex. And we need to have students who can really think broadly and think nimbly about all the potential solution spaces that are out there.
So true. Okay, so I noticed you turned this one on. We'll give this one a shot as well.
She doesn't want to, she just wants to pass the mic.
But leave that one off. Thank you. Okay, we're going to pass the mic. It is much better now, I think. So let's talk about a little bit about the opportunities. We talked about some of the challenges, but what are the opportunities for future leaders and graduates as we face a loss of biodiversity and a changing climate? How do we make sure we begin to address that through our programs or continue to expand, and we think about really looking to the future with those complexities? And then also thinking about some of the changes that are happening, the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And those that can be pretty expansive. But let's go over, we'll start in the middle this time with Dr. Green.
Wonderful, thanks. So I think that the opportunities lie in pivoting away from the places we thought were where change happened in the past and embracing places where change is happening now. And so, I mean, I'm an economist, so you're going to have to just forgive me in advance, but a lot of this is looking to the private sector, where they have made promises on climate change, on carbon reductions, where they're very interested in cost-effective ways of meeting those, some of which may very well involve forests, right? So in the sense of taking carbon out of the air rather than reducing how much they put into it. And the role of markets in helping better manage our natural resources, whether that's carbon markets and the role of forests in those carbon markets, or whether it's what we anticipate will develop around biodiversity markets and the role that those markets might have in providing different incentives for natural resource management. I think that there has been historically skepticism, maybe not in forestry where there were lots of very successful private businesses, but certainly in other aspects of environmental management, some skepticism about the private sector and certainly some skepticism about markets. I still teach the core econ class. Believe me, they're skeptical. But I think that those are areas where we're seeing growth and where we're seeing really new opportunity. So I tell this story about our forestry students, and I used to be able to tell an MF student from an MEM student without any trouble. They were wearing a flannel shirt, jeans, and some hiking boots. I mean, you knew it. So about 6 years ago, I was at a student reception and I was talking to a student who was wearing Ferragamos and a suit that was much, much too well fitted for any of my students at the Nicholas School. And I said, "Oh, say, what program are you in?" And he says, "I'm in Masters of Forestry and an MBA student." And I said, "Aha." And he was on his way to Wall Street to work on carbon finance, right? So this is the change that we've seen. We do still have true, in the boots, out in the field foresters, but we're seeing a real evolution of student interest. And that's in part because of money, but it's also in part because if you ask students of this generation, the Gen Zers, where they think they can really have impact, and this pains me as someone who got a PhD in public policy, they don't say Washington, D.C. anymore. They really think that where they can have impact is working in the private sector or working in the nonprofit sector. So I think that's where opportunities lie. Which way do you want me to go?
Either way,
Okay, I'm
either
going-
of you want to add anything
Alright.
to that?
Totally can't disagree with that because I spent a lot of time dealing with students and moving around, and that big shift is real. Most of our students today, they love the conservation world or they deep into the private sector. What's missing is we got to build a better relationship with our industry partners to engage them to know what we need to develop a student to look like or be like when they show up to work for them. The current market is so different now that our students, we got to do a better job, especially with our faculty, engaging them into what our partners are seeking. What do they need to learn in the business side? But most importantly, not just being out in the field. All that is important. But I feel like AI, along with all the technology today, our students will be well-rounded and well-prepared to get into that sector and engage with the people that we want to bring along with us.
Next question.
If you'd like to add something, or we can go on. to the
No,
next
go
one.
ahead.
Okay. All right. So let's, just kind of watching the time. I'm just going to ask one more question. And then I'm going to open it up for you and anyone on Zoom that would like to add to this. And so we've heard about the uniqueness of each of your programs. We've heard about the complexities and the challenges that are facing us and will in the future, and how we need to prepare the students for those challenges, including how to find common ground in this divisive time. So let's talk about, now that you've heard each other speak and you know each other and you've collaborated quite a bit, what really piques your interest about each other's programs?
I think one thing is that you're seeing all the same trends at your schools that we're seeing. And part of it has to do with having the same pool of students coming in. But virtually everything both of you have said is true at our school as well. So that piques my interest. I'm interested in whether we change how we're recruiting, whether we're only recruiting a subset of kinds of students, and that how we broaden the kinds of students we're bringing in, so that, for instance, there's more diverse perspectives in the classroom already, instead of having to teach them when they come. So anyway, that occurred to me as well. We've done a little experimenting in this, but I think it would be useful to do that. The other thing is thinking really explicitly about training students to go into fields that are not traditionally environment or forestry fields. So how we think about giving them skills where they can have the critical thinking skills, the writing skills, the analytical skills, the modeling skills, the data analysis skills, the AI skills that can apply to any field, and have them bring environmental sustainability into a job that might not be advertised as an environmental job. So that's been something I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that completely. And we are telling students now, because the job market looks different than when they started their programs, that they're going to need to think more expansively about what an environmental job is. And when you looked on LinkedIn, they have statistics about how many green jobs there are, and they keep growing up. And we're like, well, what are they counting? Like we need to be really clear with students that there are other pathways to have impact. And sometimes the path to have the most impact might not be the kind of job that they initially came to the school to have, right? And again, I see this a lot in energy, but I'm sure it's equally true in resource management. Like, I'm not going to work for a utility, those utilities. And then that we'll have alumni come and talk about the real impact that they've had working for a utility and changing some of the utilities' approach to renewables in a way that actually really matters, right? So I think trying to, again, build that into our students. I also wonder, as we're doing this, if we might be reaching a moment where we put aside our normal silo building and competition with one another for students, and do think about, maybe we'll get into antitrust problems. I don't know. The historian who studies this in the back is telling me where I have problems, but thinking about how we do message what we do more broadly to appeal to a different kind of student. That's not just come to the Nicholas School or come to Yale or come to NC State. And then something I know we've been thinking about more in the triangle is, okay, we don't have to be great at everything at Duke. If NC State is really good at that thing, maybe that's a thing we are not going to be so good at. And we're going to try to leverage our resources in that way. So the fiscal pressures that we're under, I think, may change, some of how we approach this going forward.
So I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I do more recruiting for Yale and Duke than I do for NC State sometimes.
We thank you. Thank you very much.
Strictly because I think what we're talking about is finding the right student for the right place and opening our eyes up to the opportunities. We're not experiencing that in a way that we can sit here and kind of joke about it, but I feel like if we can do a better job of understanding where our students are coming from, what their needs are, and how we as the faculty that are supporting the students' outcome come together and work closer together. So I don't disagree with anything they've said here tonight.
Love these answers. Okay, great. And actually, one of the other questions that I had for our panelists touches on how do we collaborate? Are there opportunities for mutual learning? And I think you shared some ideas that maybe we can think about each of the strengths that each program has, and then maybe there's a way to collaborate in the future. We often do that in our own states, right? With programs with community colleges or others in ways that we can move people into a forestry program, but being able to do that among the forestry programs is intriguing. So now it's time to open things up for you to ask questions of our panelists, and also for those on Zoom. You can share your questions through the Q&A versus the chat, and so those will be shared with me as well. And so we have one question.
Yeah. Anyone talk about sustainability, but it seems to me that the forests are and the environment is under tremendous threat. And so, what do you teach in your school about the survivability of particular kinds of trees? What is going to have to be done? Are there going to be special programs to eliminate insect predators? And how do you envision forestry in the future under the threat that it now has?
Great question. I would like to.
To me, forest health is very important. We spend quite a bit of time educating in that space. But most importantly, I think we got to do a better job with our people that are living in the communities that we reside in. Most people are dependent on us to educate the public, and we need everyone to help educate the public. Forestry is an important role. We need to be able to cut trees. We need to have sustainability models out there in place. But we also need markets. And we're in a declining space where markets are going away. So what is the next pathway to create markets that we can create a good sustainable model to help us without creating health problems in the forest?
Yeah, I'm going to let you go because I'm going to
Yeah, I would say that the work in forest health at all of these organizations includes long-term monitoring and
Yep.
studying. to ask the questions, what's happening? And then we ask questions, why is it happening? And that's in the research phase. The monitoring is not just field work, but it includes satellite imagery, it includes drones and lots of high-tech kinds of monitoring. Where are the trees dying? Then we ask, why are the trees dying? Then we do some modeling and some experimentation to ask, how can we manage and how can we prescribe a resilient forest for the future? And all that happens not only in the classroom, but also in our research laboratories and through our doctoral students.
Yeah, so what they said. And also I think one of the advantages we have, all of us, is we actually have active forests that we can take our students out to and they can learn from, right? So those experiments are actually happening in our forests. And they're also seeing the impacts of invasive species and other things in our forest. And I also, I mean, speaking for the Duke Forest, which is right on the border of campus and which is used extensively by the Durham community for recreation, I think it also provides a really great way for us to connect to the community and help to educate them about forest health and the issues in the forest. And that became really salient during COVID when everybody and their brother was out on the trails in the Duke Forest. But it continues to be a way in which I think Duke gives back to the Durham community.
Great. So I'm going to have one question from Zoom. If you can just hold that, and we'll go to that question and come right back up to you. And so for our panelists, would it be possible to discuss, if you can elaborate on working with inner city youth and urban forests and thinking about urban forestry programs, which vary again. Some programs offer that, some do not. And how do we attract inner city youth to forestry degree programs?
Want to start?
So I know this year we're exploring an urban forestry program. Can't speak to where we are with it right now as far as an enrollment process, but that is by far one of the growing, I call business right now for our school. Most of our students come in from the city. They want to know about trees and how do we make an impact with their lives to get them on board to enroll within our college. And the urban processes, to me, is one of the fastest growing things. We just hired an urban forester for our university. First one that I've seen since I've been around. Helping to grow that program and utilizing all the resources across the state to help facilitate more outcome for our inner city schools. I work with a lot of high schools of the community colleges around how do we help them see that managing the forest is important from one tree to multiple acres. So it's a great program, something we should do.
Yeah, okay, Indy's going to do that. The ecologist.
Yeah.
It includes everything from street trees to greenways down the middle of boulevards to actual parks that are located within cities. So it crosses that whole spectrum. We in our school have an urban resources initiative that engages with communities in tree planting. And we don't plant for the community, we plant with the community. We engage individuals, including previously incarcerated individuals and youth. We just planted our 10,000th tree. And we study those urban forests as well. And it does tend to recruit people into the field.
And I'll just add that it's important. I mean, in all things, right? People can't imagine themselves in a field or in a career if they don't see anybody who's like them that does that, right? So, I mean, I told a story about how I got into environment by going on these field trips. I mean, I had a particular upbringing that made that possible. So I think when we have PhD students, which we've had, who are actually studying urban forests and are out in the Durham community, working with communities and trees, I think that matters. It also matters that we go back before they get to college, right? And Nikki Cagel's here and has run for many years our K-12 programs with the Durham Public Schools. And we have folks that are doing similar things in Carteret County where our Marine Lab is, to excite young people from different backgrounds about what the possibilities are for them in the environment, because they don't know people who do this for a living, right? And so we have to create those opportunities so that they see those possibilities and they see that environment isn't just this luxury thing that rich people get to worry about, but it actually affects their life and their community as well. And so they're invested in enhancing it going forward.
Wonderful. Now over to you.
My question was about cuts in funding. How is that impacting the faculty brain drain that's happening in many fields? And how does that look in terms of future of your profession?
Did everyone hear the question in the back?
I can repeat it. Okay.
Cuts in
The question-
funding, cuts in funding. I think some folks didn't hear. So we can just quickly repeat how that's affecting universities and sort of the brain drain.
I know this is something that all of us are worried about. I'm gonna knock on the fake wood that's in front of me. This might, yeah.
It's not real wood.
I know. It's the fake wood. It had, we imagined it was going to be much worse than it's actually turned out to be so far. Okay. And there's still a lot of things that could change that. So we're not like having a big party yet. But thus far, actual decrease, like cancellation of grants has been relatively minimal for our school. There was a real slowdown in grant making activity in the early days of the administration. But that picked up now. People are furloughed, so it slowed down a little bit again. We don't know where we're going to land. We're fairly certain we're going to land with a smaller resource envelope than we had before. That how much smaller, we're not sure. And then in addition to the endowment tax, which Indy talked about, there's also the discussion of facilities and administration rates, or sometimes called indirect cost rates, which I don't know what Yale's rate is, but Duke's is 61%, and they're talking about taking it down to 15%. And the thing that is very difficult to explain to people is that's not overhead. It gets called overhead or like some sort of margin that we're just charging the federal government. Those are real costs of doing research that you can't assign to a specific grant, right? And it might be instrumentation or lab space or library services. There's a lot of things that go into those rates that are real costs of doing research. So that's a hard story to tell, and it's frankly not a particularly popular story right now. So we haven't seen the brain drain also from the faculty side yet. What we worry about a lot are the current PhD students and even the undergrads thinking about going to get a PhD, who are looking at their principal investigator advisor and going, that life doesn't look so fun, and decide they might want to go do something else. That's what I lose sleep at overnight.
Yeah, I would say for us that it depends on the field as to how much faculty members are influenced. The laboratory sciences are really hurt. Those that involve travel to Panama or Asia or South America, et cetera, travel costs, Africa, are really hit as well. Individual faculty members are amazingly adaptive. We have a whole new vocabulary now for talking about climate change or environmental justice. We speak about these things in other ways that can get through the filters to get funded. I think we can stay optimistic if this doesn't go on too long. But the laboratory sciences in particular will really suffer if this goes on a long time. There are entire programs that have been wiped out by the federal agencies. And I would say particularly at DOE and NSF and NIH. this is not our school, but our medical school is panicked right now, for instance.
Ditto.
Ditto, okay. Well, it's back to me here. I don't want to.
Question over here.
Yeah, I was thinking back to, Lori, you were mentioning the training students to intellectually nimble, receiving complex ideas. And in my mind, granted, as a humanities scholar myself, the humanities comes to mind as kind of a broad arena of field where those kinds of ideas do get taught. And so I was curious if y'all could speak prospectively to your current, I guess, within your schools, collaborations with broadly the humanities or environmental humanities. And then specifically, are there opportunities that you see going forward if there aren't already those collaborations of what that could look like, whether curriculumly, institutionally, professional development wise?
Okay. Okay, it's me again. Okay, so we do not have humanists, School of the Environment as faculty. That is, we mimic arts and sciences in many ways, but we have natural scientists and social scientists, including the more qualitative social sciences, but we don't have humanists. We do, however, partner with folks in different disciplines. I might have written a book with a historian that's sitting in the back of the room. So we do reach out and have research collaborations and cross-listing classes. For undergrad programs in particular, they do have to take a class in environmental humanities. So we're always looking for that. The last thing I'll just mention is one area where we may see us actually do more sooner is we're hopeful to have a first year undergraduate program where students can start at our marine lab. And there are definitely some faculty in humanities departments at Duke that have raised their hand to say, I wouldn't mind teaching for a semester at the coast. So that might be a place where we actually start to see embedded faculty, if you will, from the humanities. No.
Good answer.
Good answer.
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
Wonderful.
Kyra? Sure.
I have to riff on that question. So my name is Kyra Jacobs. I am a 1997 graduate of the Nicholas School of the Environment and President Emeritus of the Alumni Council. And it was my good luck that this lecture was happening tonight, the night before our meeting in Beaufort starts tomorrow with the Board of Visitors, which I now serve on. So I came to the Nicholas School as an English major, and I had imposter syndrome because I had a BA in English, and I always wanted to work for the Environmental Protection Agency. I'll get to my question. So I just got interviewed by the school, and interviews on the website, and so I had a chance to think back to 30 years ago. And when I was talking to the admissions person at the time, Bertie Belvin, I said, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to come here because I have a BA in English. And she said, you're exactly the person we're looking for because you don't have an engineering degree, you don't have a biology degree. And that gave me the confidence to come here. I am from Boston, so I wanted to expand my horizons, and it was always my dream to come to Duke. I have two questions for the panel, and I also want to thank my mentor, Judd Edburn is here. Judd was, I was his teaching assistant. I always say I was never smart enough to be a forester. I'm a water research scientist, and I've had my dream job at the Environmental Protection Agency for the past 28 years, and I share a cubicle wall with an amazing Yale School of the Environment student alum. So my question is for you, Bettina, and also for the audience. I feel like in my work protecting drinking water supplies in New England, what I think we need to find new partners. So for those of you in the audience who don't know, the School of the Environment at Yale and Duke, we receive a master's in environmental management. We don't receive an MS. We're not doing original research. So I worked for Duke Power Company. That was my master's project. I worked for a nonprofit in Northern Maine the summer between grad school. And I don't know as much, Sam, I'm sorry about NC State, but my question is, in my work every day, how do we engage people like all of you who chose to come here tonight my parents live at a retirement community. There's so many smart people in this room, and I would love to see Yale, New Haven engage the public. I'd love to see Duke engage people that were interested enough to come to this event tonight. And my question for you, Bettina, because I just took 3 days off from work to go to the SAF meeting in Hartford, was I have never seen anything like it. I think there were about 1,400 students, 1,400 people in attendance and about 400 students. And I think forestry does an amazing job providing scholarships and getting, like in the water field, I've never seen anything like that. So hats off to SAF. So the question is, how do we engage unique partners like retired people or adult professionals? Because guess what? The people in their 30s who have little kids are not here tonight. But you folks are obviously interested in what we're talking about. So the students and those in the room question.
So thank you for that. I think yes, so thank you for mentioning the convention. It's really exciting to see how many students are participating in SAF and some of the incredible speakers that we had at convention this year, and the areas that we explored. Obviously, you have the concurrent sessions, but the plenary sessions and the conversations that took place looking to the past as we celebrated 125th, where we are today, but also where we need to go in the future. And to really think those students are our future. They give us hope. Last year when we were in Colorado together, about 500 students. We know there's a little less travel this year for some organizations in the Forest Service, others that weren't able to participate at the same levels they had in the past, but many of them have career opportunities there for students. Like they actually set up and have conversations with students and provide job opportunities afterwards. And maybe a little decline in that this year, but I think it was great to see over 400 students participate and the energy and enthusiasm and the diversity and what I've seen throughout my career and being a member of SAF for some time. It's really exciting to see. And I think that however we can best support students and many of the society like APSAF, which is the 3-state Society of American Foresters chapter. Society of American Foresters, for those of you that may not know, is a professional society for those of us in forestry and natural resources. There's also fisheries and rangeland management and wildlife, the Wildlife Society and others. And so that is a way to engage students in their chapters at many of our universities that support SAF and other student chapters and then provide scholarships for them to participate in the SAF convention or similar organization or conferences. And so I think that's really important to be able to provide opportunities to cover travel. I mean, they're just trying to get through each day at school. And so any way that we can sort of take off that financial burden and then have opportunities for them to interact. And so that's one thing we've been doing at the Society of American Foresters is to create these meetups where the students can get together and they can hear from each other and we can hear from them on what they need and want and how we structure meetings and so forth, or not have meetings, and young professionals. And we had a women's meetup. And so we're trying to continue to do that. And I think hats off to the universities that are supporting those student chapters and the faculty and staff that are doing that. That's really important too, because it takes time. It's like being a coach or someone else in high school. You're having to spend extra time to be able to support these students, but it's so important. And they're our future leaders. And we have a program at the Nature Conservancy. I do need to give a shout out to an internship program that we have. And so how do we help support those students along the way so that they have a place after they graduate or they have opportunities while they're still in school? We have a 10-week paid internship that we're very excited about. And in the 4th year, moving into the 4th year, a 4th cohort. And that's paid with a housing stipend. So any time that we can step up and provide more opportunities like that, a long-winded answer to something that I care deeply about. So thank you for asking that question. And I know we have others in the room that I think you kind of tossed it out too, that may have ideas and thoughts that they have of their own or any of our panelists. Let's see. I think we have 2 on with this comment or question here. Any comment on to address that question? Yes.
Long ago, graduated of law school, and I went to law school because I wanted to do environmental work and I should have gone to do it very comfortable oriented. And, there wasn't, the same opportunities then for as much environmental work as there are now. But I think the distrust of science that you mentioned and the political split. I think legislators are mostly lawyers. I really think there needs to be more engagement with law students and with legislators so that in the future, people understand about the environment. They understand that from the legal standpoint, so they could see why it's important. Because now I feel like they say, oh, there's those tree hunters. This is what we're doing. And I really think that that's where, people who are older or whatever, I mean, we need to talk to all the people who are going to be making decisions. The law, the legislators, whether it's state, wherever.
So I'll repeat sort of the question.
To know whether there's anything going on. I mean, I know that there are a few people at the law school that do, who also do work at the Nicholas School. I think you can still get a joint degree, but I don't think that most people have any clue about environmental issues at all.
So the question had to do with how we engage with legislators. And I will speak on your behalf. It's not really quite on your behalf, but just about. You serve on the board of the Nicholas Institute, which does a lot of work with legislators in DC. And tomorrow, I will be going to join our faculty in DC to do a Senate staffer training. And I think we are all starting to understand that this needs to be a part of our responsibility. I think both of our schools have good programs in law and the environment now. We have a center in environmental law and policy. But this notion of outreach that was the source of the question that you asked, as well as the prior one, is difficult to do under the current circumstances in some ways with the resource limitations. I'll just say that what you're asking is, can we broaden our mission to do more outreach? And the answer is we sure hope so, and we care a lot about it. And I hope we have the resources to be able to do more of it. We'll be engaging in this starting tomorrow in our school in Washington, D.C. So I saved you some time.
Oh. No, I just, I will add that, yes, we do have faculty who have joint appointments between the school or, secondary appointments in school and law school. They run the Duke Environmental Law Clinic, which actually works with real clients. It's half Nicholas School students, half law students. I'm sure Yale has similar things, but you are also right that the vast majority of law students may not ever encounter this. And in fact, that's probably true for the vast majority of business students, public policy students, divinity students, medical students, nursing students, you name it. We got 10 schools. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop. So a few years ago, Duke launched its new climate commitment, and Toddy Steelman, who used to have this job that I'm in now, is now the vice provost and vice president for climate and sustainability at Duke. And one of their goals is to ensure that all Duke students are climate literate when they graduate from Duke. Now, that's going to take a while. That's not something that you do overnight, but that is definitely one of the goals, because we know that it comes back to what you were saying, like there's other green jobs, right? Every job at some level could be a green job. And people need, from a variety of different professions, need to understand how what they do interacts with the environment. And I'll just, the school that I've been most impressed with, I'm impressed with all of my schools, fellow dean schools, but nursing has really, really embraced this and is doing a fantastic job of training other nurses to train nurses to understand more about climate and health impacts. And it's really exciting to see that. Okay.
Thank you. And that intersection between public health and natural resources is so critical. And that's how we can connect with everyone, I think, from drinking water to clean air to getting out and recreating. And I think it comes back to trees and forests are the answer.
Always.
So just remember that. We are at time, and I want to be able to turn the mic back over to Tanya, but I just want to point out a few things. We did take a step back in time, to kind of the origins and the anniversaries we're celebrating this year with many of our universities and organizations and the private industry. We also talked about some of the challenges that we're facing and the opportunities right now. And then we look to the future, challenges, opportunities around AI, and other complexities of polarization, opportunities to find common ground, to have civic debate and dialogue, and opportunities to make sure that our students have the skill sets that they need to be able to enter the world and come to work with organizations that many of us represent. And so I'm really hopeful about the future with these tremendous programs we have at these universities and the tremendous leaders that we have, and those of you in the room that care enough to show up tonight and want to be part of this conversation. So thank you. And I was really struck by how often each one of the panelists mentioned community. And that's really what it's about, and how they engage with community, not just their students and faculty and staff and other disciplines, other programs within their universities, but within the community in which they live. And that's really important in how we're going to be successful in the future. I think is to continue to engage and to build community and healthy communities. So thank you again for taking time to join us. And for those on Zoom, apologies again for some of the mic difficulties at the beginning, but I think we got through them on the other side. And hopefully you heard most of what was shared this evening, and that you'll continue these conversations after you leave this evening. So it's a pleasure being with you this evening.